So here we are, sharing secrets of the soil with me, your host, Regen Ray. Hello, soil lovers. Regen Ray here, and welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Soil. I'm your host, Regen Ray, and we are hanging out with Luke from Regen Farming Solutions. How are you doing today, Luke?
Living the dream, mate. Living the dream.
Excellent. And I hear you're a bit stuck in your little oasis island at the moment, affected a little bit by the floods.
Yeah, we're lucky enough to have an island at the moment. So, we've got flood water all around us. Not as bad as some, but we can still get in and out in our little boat. So it's just making life a little bit more interesting.
Excellent. Very interesting to see the landscape and, literacy of the land kind of change with different, weather events and so forth. But yeah, today we're going to chat about soil and your passion for it and what you've kind of done in the regen farming space and the education and solutions that you've been putting together. For those who don't know of you personally, can you just share a little bit about who you are and how you fit into the landscape?
Yeah, so Luke Harrington's my name. I live in Deniliquin, sort of near the New South Wales Victorian border, and basically grown up my entire life, except for a few stints in the city in drought times, in an agricultural area. And I've probably done everything that you can to destroy soil: laser buckets, scrapers, spray rigs, all those sorts of things. And then anyway, I ended up working for a multinational sales company, agricultural sales company. They wear green shirts. And so my job was to go out on farm and talk to people about what they wanted. And one of the two things that they mainly quite often said that they wanted to do was they wanted to cut out their high amounts of fertiliser and high chemicals that they were using. So I would go back to the powers that be, smarter than I, and they said, oh, well, that's not possible, da-da-da. So when you say no, something's not possible, that tends to make me want to have a bit of a closer look. And so I started playing around in the soil health space, and I realised that all of our soil health issues, our cropping issues, animal health issues, human health issues, all come back to soil health, and in some way, shape or form. And so that sort of sparked me on a bit of a journey. And and I did this part-time for a long time. And several years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I went through a period where I buried 14 people in 18 months, and they were all things that they probably shouldn't have died of. Youngest one was my old man. He was 70 years of age, fittest bloke you'd ever met in your life. He was riding his bike 20 Ks a day. He'd do 20 laps of an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and he went from that to dead in 6 months. And and he was only 70. And then we had two young girls take their own lives. And all these things come back to how we fuel our body and how back to our soil health. And I needed to do something. So that's when I really got serious about doing what we do. And because if I didn't do something, I was probably the next person in the box. So that's sort of what drives me. And so we started Regen Farming. I've been playing around with it for quite some time. And when I actually named my business Regen Farming, I'd actually never heard the word regenerative farming before. So
most people probably didn't.
Yeah, that's right. And it's just sort of grown and grown from there. So, and what we try and do, and I suppose, is to help educate and provide knowledge, provide support, and provide products to farmers and gardeners and whoever wants to sort of move down a soil health path. And we don't have all the answers, but we do have a really good network where we can send people to for different things like grazing management, things like that. We can point them all in the right direction. So I suppose that's our role, is to provide that knowledge and support on farm and the products, and go from there, because we have all these fantastic speakers go out and talk, and then people go home from these days really excited, but they just don't know what to do from there. Yep. And that's our role, is to go out, and I think that's how I see it. We go out and help people after they've seen the Christine Joneses or the David Hardwicks and Martin Stackers of the world, and we help them implement those things.
Yeah, I love that, because I definitely think it's there's always like, okay, well, now I know, but then how do I actually do it? I've got the knowledge and I've got the inspiration and I'm motivated, but what's next? What's my action plan? And I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle, probably the most important, because knowledge without action is nothing. So you be the smartest person in the room, and if you don't do anything, it's not really useful. So I love that. And so what are people normally looking for? Like, how do people normally come to you first and say, I have this problem, or I want to solve this? Or what are people normally like before meeting you, and then what are they like after working with you?
So most, and it's quite often an economical thing at the moment. We get a few people come because they want to change, but most of it's an economic thing, and they believe travelling this path is more economical. And in the long run, absolutely it is. But there is some investments to be made along the way as well. So I suppose that's why most people come. And then as they learn about soil health, then their mindset changes. So, and I think it's really important. Just take it step by step with people, and once they have the knowledge, well, then they get excited. And to have a 60 or 65-year-old farmer doing a dance in the paddock because he's found his first worm in 30 years, that's really exciting stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting, that there are farmers that, you just forget that there are so many farming systems out there that haven't seen worms in so long, and we've just kind of normalized that, and I think there is something definitely magical about dancing in the paddock, knowing that you've seen your first worm, and the amount of effort it's taken to get to that first signal of soil health improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
And it excites me. Like I don't know how many times I've said this, but we are living in the most exciting time in agriculture since the Green Revolution.
Yeah.
And with the knowledge that we've got, the people we've got, the products we've got, it's just such an exciting time.
Yeah. And nothing green about the Green Revolution, really. Kind of a bit of greenwashing there in a way, in hindsight anyway. At the time, it was throw this on and everything will go green. But now we've realized that was going green, but the soil was dying right in front of our faces. So
yeah, and as human beings, we're a little bit slow on the uptake sometimes.
Yeah.
Noticing these things. But anyway,
I always wonder if we needed to see the low in order for us to then rebuild the high. If we don't have that reference point, maybe we've had to come exactly where we are in order for us to rebuild or create a different future, because otherwise we just wouldn't know, what it would be like to go down this path. There will always be that what if.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember who it was, maybe Brene Brown. And she was saying something along the lines of, if you don't know what no is, you'll never understand what yes is.
Yeah.
So exactly the same. We need to know where bottom is to work out where the highs can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's and it's also to give credit to what we have done, because, a lot of people get a bit annoyed that it's like, oh, you're telling me that what I've done is wrong. And it's like, no, it's not wrong. It's just the best that we've all been able to do. And you've, perfect example, where you've actually worked for the company, and you've been there and you've given the advice, and then you've kind of had the self-awareness to kind of go, hang on, these dots aren't joining and this isn't making sense. And you've, taken action to go down the rabbit hole, I guess, in a good way, and come out and share what you've learned with everyone. And so on that note, I want to talk a little bit, there's a lot of different ideas about what regenerative means. And I haven't asked this question for a while on the podcast because I felt like it was exhausted, but from knowing your background and where you've come and seen lots of different people, I'm curious to unpack what the word regenerative means to you, and, what regenerative farming kind of entails it from your point of view.
And I find this, I don't want to put regenerative farming into a box, because I think that will stop innovation. But for me, regenerative farming is really simple. And if we can regenerate farming soils, we regenerate farming families, and we regenerate farming communities. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about for me. Right. So, but the word regen or regen farming it's more of a thought process. It's not so much I do this and this is what I get out of it. It's more about a thought process. In a decision-making process, is the decision I make today going to improve my soil for tomorrow? And that's as simple as it gets. we can make all these other things about water infiltration and all these other fantastic claims, but at the end of the day, it's just a step-by-step process, and anybody can do that. A big multinational company can do that, right down to the backyard gardener.
Yep.
So that's what it's about for me.
Yeah, I love that. It is very powerful, but yet simple. If we wake up and make decisions and do actions that leave our soil better today than what it was yesterday, and better for tomorrow than what it is today, it's a very kind of nice filter to put your decision making through. And I love the fact that you took it to that point of like, it is a decision and it is a way that we think about our soils and our lives and our decision making. Because I often feel the same, is that, regenerative farming is, we need to be regenerative humans first before we can be regenerative farmers or have a regenerative farm or regenerative business, because it really does come from, the way that we decide and do things in our actions. And it is about mindset, the paradigm shifts, the way that we look at the land and see it for its beauty and its life, rather than I need to kill that weed.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not a difficult thing. And as a human being, we just have this tendency to make things as difficult as we possibly can. Whereas it needs to be simple. And yes, it's a very complex system that we're dealing with, but they're still fairly simple things that we can do to improve our soil. So it's not about making it that hard that no one can understand it. It's just about taking baby steps each day or each week or whatever it might be. So, and when you go down that process of asking the questions and asking the right questions, not only does your land improve, but you improve as a person. Like, while I've been on my journey, I've done natural horsemanship and I've done all these other things, and it's improved me as a person, I believe, through going down this path.
With myself as well. People, the way I look at life has completely changed the more I've dug into the soil and the world of nature. You just see things, from a very different line. People just go, how do you think like that? And it's like, I don't know. It's just, when you know how the, nature and soil works, it just changes your physiology and everything about your physical being. It's very wholesome, I must say. It's a very lovely world to live in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just love the direction that we're going in this space. And I hope that doesn't change and it doesn't get commercialized or whatever and end up, because it makes us no better than what we've been through. Yeah. It makes us I won't say better, no different. If we drive that certain, it has to be this, it has to be this, it makes us no different to what we've been through for the last 70 years.
Yep, I agree. And putting it all in a box or saying you need to tick this checklist doesn't fit this mold. And, we've had conversations with people in the past in regards to like whether we should certify regen and all that. And, the big consensus is no, don't ruin it. And I remember being in a room where a politician stood up and said, as a politician, what can government do? And the general consensus of the panel was like, sit down and let us fix it ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we can't let legislation and all that kind of get in the way of what needs to just happen naturally. So I love that. When someone's coming to work with you, what kind of problems are they trying to solve? Like what are they hoping to get out of it? Is it about soil health? Is it about profitability? Is it, what's really driving them to go down this regenerative pathway?
A lot of the time it's profitability, and they're at a space where they're maybe in trouble. And then you've got other people who are coming who have been following the regen world for a while, and they're going, no, this sounds right to me. And so it's a few different angles they come from, which is great. And we need people to be coming from all walks of life and from all decision-making processes and that to really make a difference. It's probably mainly they want to be more profitable. And then you've got, obviously, they want to be able to hand their farms on now to their children and for them to be profitable, because we have done an amazing job in the last, even I think in the last generation of taking farming from one of the most important jobs in the world down to being the farming parents are going to their kids, don't be a farmer, go to uni, become a doctor, become a lawyer. We have to change that. We need the best and the brightest to come back to the land and have passion about it. So that's my thought process on it anyway. So.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because my grandmother recently passed away, and I just learned this week that my grandmother was forced not to go to school to work on the family farm. It was very opposite to that. You know, you just said about don't be a farmer, go to school, get an education. Yet my grandmother was basically her father paid the fines not to send her to school so she could work on the farm, you know, and then bring that to Australia and set up, you know, the amazing permaculture garden that we have here in Melbourne. So like, it's just interesting how that paradigm has shifted, and we need to bring that back where parents want to leave the farm to their family and want to keep that legacy kind of going. You know, we don't find it often that there's 5th, 6th, 7th generation farmers anymore.
No, that's for sure. And it's so important to change that, because as a family farm or a family farmer, you're just so much more in touch with the land. But when you're just getting a paid employee, your passion's probably not there as much. It's just about driving up and down the paddock with whatever piece of equipment you've got. So I'm not saying that's all those people, but there's no incentive for you to really make sure that the land is looked after and handed on. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. And who is Regen Ag for, like, or Regen farming? Like, if someone's listening to this podcast going, oh, I'm not sure yet. And like, I was literally on a permaculture class last night, and the wife that was there said, oh, my husband hates the word regenerative farmer, regenerative. He thinks it's woo-woo, you know, hippie stuff, you know. So if someone's sitting there with that mindset, like, what do they need to kind of learn to know about regenerative farming to get them excited and on board with it?
Well, for me, regenerative farming, it's, I think for a lot of farmers that feel that way, that regenerative farming is not for them, is they think that we're here to take away all their tools, and it's about not doing this and not doing that and all those sorts of things. It's not really about that. It's about giving extra tools and being able to transition away from some things. But like the tools will be taken off us eventually through government regulation with what's happening around the world. That's just going to happen. So whoever jumps on now and fixes their soil health now is going to be in front of the box. But it's not about taking away those tools. It's about having more tools to move your soil health forward, your profitability forward, your plant health forward, your animal health, even your family health. That's what it's all about. And it's for everybody. It's like regen farming is for every piece of land on the country.
Yep, I agree. And do you agree that scale doesn't matter either? Like, you can be a regenerative gardener in your own backyard, or even, you know, to a broad acre system?
Absolutely. Because once again, it just comes back to improving soil health. How you do that is the decision that you need to make on your farm. But I do think it's very important that you monitor that you are moving in the right direction.
Yep.
And carbon farming is a big thing at the moment.
Yep.
But I don't care whether you make some money out of carbon farming or not. You have to understand by lifting your carbon in your soil, you're going to, water holding capacity is going to be better. Mineral cycling is better. Nitrogen cycling is better. Everything just is better and more profitable. So like, that's where the money is. And if you can make a few dollars on the side with a carbon trading program, go for it. But there's so many other things that are much more important.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because that's exactly what I said to this lady last night. I said, I'm very curious why your husband has an issue with it. And then she told me, and then I said, oh, well, just rebrand it as carbon farming. He'll get excited about putting carbon in the soil and getting credits for it. And she's like, oh, that's true. You know, sometimes it is just relabeling. At the end of the day, you're going to make the soil better, you know, so relabel it whatever you need to get yourself excited. And you know, and I think the whole labeling stuff, you know, we kind of moving away from it. I just find so many people now who like come forward and say, I want to be a regenerative farmer, or I am a regenerative farmer. And that's exciting, because I think we are very much at that cusp of, you know, innovation and the tipping point to happen where it just becomes, I'm seeing, you know, food companies put regenerative sourced stuff, you know, on packaging. I'm like, people don't even know what this means yet, you know, and they're already on the label, which is a dangerous greenwashing territory as well. So we need to be careful about that as well.
Yeah, and I do talk to some of my farmers about that. When they label themselves or they say that they're regenerative, I go, how can you prove that? Like, what are you doing to show that that is the case? Just because you're not using one insecticide that's been banned doesn't mean you're regenerative. There's a few other criterias that need to be sort of looked at that you can say that that's what's going on. So, and at the end of the day, regen farming is one thing, really good soil health management.
Yep. And what would be your North Star? Like, what's something that you kind of go, if this is true, everything else has to be true? Is it worms, like you mentioned before, or is it something else?
The worms, for me, worms are the canary in the coal mine, I suppose. When you lose your worms in an area where you should have them, that's just a sign that things aren't going quite as well as they could be. So, and just looking in the dirt, like when you get out and you dig that shovel into the ground, you can look at it and go, there's not many air spaces there. So, like it's such a vast thing that you need to look at, and that's why visual soil health assessments are as important as a soil test. So, I'm a big fan of the 5 senses. Use what we got for free to make decisions. Absolutely. And unfortunately, some people need to have that soil test to validate what they want to know, but others don't need it as much. So, but at the end of the day, it's just being holistic and looking at everything that's there. So.
Yeah. I'm always surprised with taste and smell being kind of excluded from soil profiling and soil health. And, our nose is our first line of defense. There's no accidents right next to our mouth. It's designed that if they were going to put something that's not right for us to eat, our smells kind of make us, not want it. And soil is the same. If you're smelling soil and it's a bit toxic, or you even compost, if they don't smell good, there's probably something wrong or out of balance.
Absolutely.
Home farms as well, they should be odor-free if they're in the right balance of everything,
Yeah. We were actually at a day at Goulburn probably a month ago now, and there was a trial site, and they'd done full 100 kgs of this and 100 kgs top dress, then they did a full biological, and they were right next to each other and all the in-between. And I said to the group that was there, I said, grab one of these oat plants and have a taste of it. And then that was on where we'd use all biologicals. And then we moved across to where they'd done a very conventional soil. And the difference in the taste of the oats was just amazing. Like, one was quite sweet and sugary. You walked over to the conventional and it was bitter. And I said, well, I wouldn't eat it. So why do you expect your livestock to eat it? And and that's the best bricks meter you can ever have, is your mouth, is your taste buds.
Yeah. I think it's for everything, even food and all that, having tomatoes from a homegrown garden to, what you find in a supermarket is like worlds apart. But unfortunately, we have this ability to forget what good tasting food is like. And, it's like when you go to a farm and you drink tank water and you get away from that chlorine chemical. As soon as you get back to the city, you can smell and taste the chlorine. Yeah. But after 2 days, back to normal. Yeah. It's very quick for us to forget, and normalize, that is there. So it's, we need to be self-aware that that's how it happens, and that we need to keep putting ourselves in environments to remind us what good nutrient dense food tastes like. And, we're going to touch on that topic right after a quick break. So soil lovers, stick with us. Hello, soil lovers. I hope you're enjoying today's guest and this podcast, but I wanted to just let you know that when you get excited about soil, just as you're hearing about our guests, then you will want to check out the Soil Learning Centre. The Soil Learning Centre is a hub that we put together and digitalized all the content over the years that were originally on DVD into this online learning experience. So if any of our guests or any of the topics that we speak about during the podcast whet your appetite and you want to get your hands dirtier and dig deeper and get educated around different things around soil, whether it be biodynamics, permaculture, whether it be using a microscope, or whether it just be hanging out with other like-minded educators, mentors, and facilitators, then the Soil Learning Centre is a place for you to hang out and dig deeper. That's the soillearningcentre.com. We have lots of different programs, courses, and even a membership. So if you want to belong to a community of other soil lovers, then that's the place to hang out. Well, until we meet again, enjoy the rest of this podcast. Back to the program. Welcome back, soil lovers. You're hanging out with Regen Ray and Luke from Regen Farming. Now, Luke, you and I, before the conversation, spoke a little bit about like nutrient density and, chemical-free farming and potentially putting some kind of like labeling or testing mechanism in place. So I'm curious because, we know that a lot of people in this space don't want Regen Ag to be like certified and maybe go down the path of like what happened with organics and so forth. But what's your kind of thoughts on this kind of like new market of testing for nutrient density?
So my thought process along there is anybody can go into that market, and if it's tested nutrient dense and it's tested chemical free, we know that that's fact. I get the pleasure of going onto lots of farms and organic, biodynamic, conventional, regen, the whole lot. And you just think to yourself, some of those farms, even though they're doing some of these practices, their soil's not that good and their food, the quality of the food's coming out is probably not as good as it could be. But if we can have that nutrient dense, chemical free tested, well, we just know that that's going to be good for us as human beings. And at the moment, we're not testing that, wherever it comes from. We don't know whether what's coming out of an organic garden is better, or organic farming system is better, more nutrient dense. We have to test for that. And then that opens the market up to anybody. Anybody can send that, because I know we send grain off on a regular basis to get tested. And even though they've used a bit of glyphosate or they've used something in that, it comes back tested chemical free and higher in nutrients, because of the biological system has been able to break that down. And I just think for the farmers that are the big multi-corporates or are too scared to jump off that bandwagon straight away, that will help them go through that process. And as their soil gets better, the need for those other tools just disappears.
Yeah. And so what would this look like? Is it like a seal on a packaging, or is it part of like the nutrition table at the back of produce? Like, how do you see the mechanics of it for what consumers would look for in the supermarket aisle?
That is something that is way above me. I am not a marketing guru or all those sorts of things. And this is where we need to come together as an agricultural system and come up with something that we can prove that what we're saying is right. Yeah. And how you get to that point is up to you. It's your decision. It's your farm. It's your money to produce that product. So and the only way I know how to produce a nutrient dense, chemical free product is going down the regen biological path. So it would just makes everything above board, I suppose. Yeah. And being so like aware of like what is happening on the farm and the ecological improvements that happen over time as well. I hear all these stories sometimes where you've got like locked up land that's, conservational land, and it does nothing. It just sits there and it's got a fence around it. And yet you've got a regen farmer down the road that's got all these new wild birds and bugs and dogs that they haven't seen in decades, and it's like, the proof's in the pudding and in the outputs. And so that's really, really exciting. And I think, consumers are being distracted with too many ticks and approvals. Like what does the heart tick mean anymore? And what does the star rating mean? And we've lost trust in these kind of seals, which is a bit worrying. Like made in Australia, the same, like it doesn't mean anything anymore. But I definitely see people turn the packet over and read the ingredients and the allergy information. So for me, I think that's where it needs to be. And if there's a soil lover listening who has ideas, come forward, and you've got that idea scratching in your brain that you want to be, part of that system. I think a lot of supermarkets and a lot of food industries are looking at ways that we can better educate and make better buying decisions in the aisle. So don't sit there silently, come forward. Because like what you just said, we don't all have the smarts to solve these problems, but you've got the soil and the food nutrient density side covered. The marketing side of it is up to maybe some other brain trust. Absolutely. No one knows everything. And the sooner we all work that out, the better off the world will be. And the other thing we need to do is we need to re-educate the consumer.
Yeah.
They need to understand what they're looking for and what they're getting. So the consumer will drive the market, and the only way to do that is to educate them. And there's another one of your soil lovers could come forward and start to educate the consumer and how it all works.
Yep. The new word that I'm seeing buzzed around a little bit is what they call conscious consumers, people with, better buying decisions and the ability to see through the greenwashing and the name of the company that's on the can. There's no regulations around what you name your company. So, you could be very, holistic, organic, whatever company, but not necessarily produce that kind of level of standard. So, seeing through that and just being aware of how it all works and that we are being sold to when it comes to marketing and so forth, and cutting through the BS, training us to have better BS meters in the aisles. And what's your thoughts on like nutrient density meters and so forth? There's a bit of a discussion now about devices that can kind of scan apples and bananas and onions in the aisle using kind of spectrometer technology. You think that that's kind of the future we'll live in, where people will walk around with these meters in the shopping aisles?
I would love to think that we have enough common sense and ability to smell and feel and look and taste what it is. But if we need to go down that path and that helps us, it's just another tool. And I use it with my bricks meter all the time. Like I take bricks readings of crops, and then I'll have a chew on the grass before I actually. And I test myself all the time. I go, that's about a bricks of 6. And we look through the bricks meter and go, I'm pretty close. So, and I challenge my farmers to do that as well. Yeah, have a taste of that, and then let's look through the bricks meter. And so anytime you're walking through the paddock or walk through the supermarket, you can have a taste of something. That's how you know.
Yeah, I remember selling some bales of hay from a farm that I had in Melbourne, and the lady came in and she stuck her hand into the middle and she started chewing on it. She said, well, if I won't eat it, my horse won't eat it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I've got a hay grower that I do a fair bit of work with, and everybody comes back for his hay because their livestock just love it. They just demolish it when it goes into the paddock with their livestock. So there's the proof in the pudding.
Yep, absolutely. And so what are some of the things that you do activity-wise or exercise-wise with your farmers? Like how, involved in the farm do you get? Is it via Zoom calls? Is it site visits? There's a lot of technology now that's got satellite imagery, and you can get a lot of good information remotely that a lot of farmers don't even know is available. Are you working on the ground, like boots on the ground, or are you a bit remote as well?
I do a bit of everything. So I do remote stuff over Zoom, and I've got a girl, Zoe Crouch, who helps me out down around the stall area, and we're actually currently looking for someone sort of up north to help us out. So we can, because I think it's so important to do that visual soil health assessment as part of what we do. But then I do talk farmers through how to do it just over Zoom or over the phone. So we try and take a bit of a step-by-step approach with farmers. So I know everybody says, regenerative farming, you don't follow all these rules, but we like to do a total soil test first to see what we have in the bucket, I suppose. And we like to do a visual soil health assessment so we can see what other constraints are there. And then you can make proper decisions from that. You're not making decisions from half the information. And even then, we're probably only making a decision on half the information anyway, because as we all know, we don't really know that much about the soil, which is really sad. We can stick something on Mars within 2 inches, but we don't know what's happening with the ground we grow our food in.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it?
So it's just madness. So
and the deep oceans. We know more about the deep oceans as well than the soil that we grow our food in.
Yeah. And then we go from there. Like if we need to put a bit of phosphorus out, a bit of phosphorus needs to go out. If it's not there, it's not there. Or you change your farming enterprise or whatever it might be. So And then we're all about support. Then it's and just helping farmers go through the questions of what, why, and how.
Yep.
What's my problem? Why do I have it? And then we can work. Once we know those two things, we can work out. Oh well, this is how we can fix it. And until you've asked the question, you can't answer it.
Yeah. Love that. And are you, and I think that's really important, the point you make there, and soil lovers, really hear this out. They're like, sometimes, I meet people, they go, oh, I learned that, to be a regen farmer, I can't till. It's a no-till system, no soil disturbance. That's true to some degree, but if the best decision right now is to disturb the soil to help it get healed, then we have to, and I think you made a really good point on that as well, is that like, sometimes you may need to put some inputs out. It's like, it's not instantly day one, zero input. It's a progression. If it's taken decades to get depleted, the good news is that it doesn't take as long to regenerate, but it's going to need a remedy or a process. And sometimes some of the things that are deemed not regen is what you need to do, and so, being open to that and realizing that you got to do the next step in order to get to the final step, and it is definitely a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I say inputs, there might be times when there are other inputs that have been out there for a long time that people have forgotten about, that are maybe more healthy for the soil than choosing something else. So we'll choose that over, say, something that's damaging to the soil and still get the same outcome in the long run.
Yeah. Yep. The right thing at the right time for the right person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And understanding the farm, it's not a one size fits all. Like, you can literally have two farms side by side, and one farmer needs to do something different than the farmer on the other side of the fence, so the outputs of your farm, what you're trying to achieve, do you want to sell the farm? Do you want to pass it on? Are you trying to be, growing different produce? Have you got stacked enterprises? Like, it really is a bespoke solution, but the way the soil functions is the same, but the way what we do above the ground to get it there can be very unique. And it's great that there's people like yourself and other, mentors and thought leaders and consultants around that are, changing the paradigm. Because unfortunately, a lot of times people go to the agronomist and the agronomist says, yep, X amount of pounds of this a hectare and X amount of that. And they just follow the bouncing ball, and, they're not really, they get, 10 years into their journey and they're like, why is it harder and less, less yield, less profit. And most farmers don't bill their time to their balance sheets either. So they're working harder than what they were 10 years ago, but they're not tracking their dollar per hours, or, the cost of labor has gone up. The minute you put someone in there, you're even below broke, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And farmers and the general population need to understand that they are the most important people in your life.
Yep.
I love the saying, like, you might need a doctor once a year, a solicitor maybe once in your lifetime, but you need a farmer every day, several times, unless you want to grow all your own food. So, and they need to be paid accordingly.
Yep. And it's not just a food, it's a fiber too. Like, a lot of the clothing we wear, a lot of the stuff that we put, as byproducts, it all comes, even the table I've got my computer on, someone had to grow that timber, so it's all a lot, like all our materials around us, building supplies, all comes from nature, and farmers were involved somewhere. And you're right. And, we just got to look at what happened over the last couple of years. Like, farmers were part of that essential workers, category. But they don't treat it as essential some, 99% of the other times, so we definitely got to put that kind of farmer first mentality into place, and think about, how we can be connected to where all our produce and food and products are coming from. My lights just dimmed.
Yeah.
Move around because I've been so still podcasting. Awesome.
I thought why not have paid your power bill?
I was just talking about farmers supplying, and I shut down. Excellent. Well, if you're following the video version, which is always the best experience, you would have just seen that my lights dimmed because they're on time. So when I'm not moving enough, they dim. So that's the world of automation we live in. So thank you, Google Lights, for dimming on me. So I guess one of the things that's obviously near and dear to a lot of people at the moment, whether it be, just natural disasters in whatever shape, form, it's been fires or floods or droughts. How are you seeing people who you're working with from a regenerative point of view? What's their farms like pre, during, and post some of these events? I know flooding is near and dear to you right now, but there's also been droughts and so forth. But how are the regenerative farmers or the people that you're working with that are more natural and understanding soil seeing their landscape during and after?
Yeah, well, we live in we're a very irrigated area. So Deniliquin's being built on irrigation. And we've got farmers that irrigate twice a year, once in the spring, once in the autumn, which maybe for a dairy farmer, for argument's sake, that does that. And that's pretty good for them. And then if there's some off allocation water or something, they might do that. But so they're able to get through where other people are maybe watering every month or every fortnight or whatever it might be. So they're things that I see, and they're handling drought better. The one thing, as we were saying with the floods, if you listen to Walter Yaner's talk about the carbon sponge, just imagine if we could have absorbed 2 or 3 or 4 inches more of the rain that has fallen that's created these floods. We may have still had floods, but could we have lessened the damage and a lot? And I believe we could. As for our farmers, our regen farmers, well, it's hard for them because they're surrounded by soils that are still concrete and not absorbing. So I just think it needs to become part of the everyday discussion with the environment and water, and everything needs to come back to soil health and the ability for soil to store moisture and infiltrate moisture.
Yep, I agree. And, people think, oh, what's, 4 inches or even say 10 centimeters. You think about that visually across all the farmland. If every soil had the ability just to suck in that much amount of water, even if the flood event did happen, it might have lasted for 20 minutes, not 3 days, and that's a completely different, and it wouldn't have got a peak at the levels that it's peaking and things like that. So, it's the whole kind of saying of like, well, what can I just do? But imagine if like 8 billion people around the world did one thing, it's massive. And if every inch of soil was able to absorb an inch more water, it's powerful, and
absolutely.
We got to see it for the large scale,
Yeah, absolutely. And then when it comes to our droughts, we've created our droughts because we no longer have moisture in the environment to cycle and go back into the atmosphere and fall down in certain areas. So I know I've noticed, even as in my lifetime, we used to grow a lot of rice here. We always got summer thunderstorms, always. And now the last 2 years have been a bit different, but hardly any big summer thunderstorms come through. It's just dry. So, we're creating that environment for ourselves. So we know the reason. So let's fix it.
Yeah. And how do you think that fixing solution happens? Do you think it's people getting together and self-educating and making their own actions? Or do you think that it needs to be legislated? And, are there just too many people who wait for things to become regulated and laws before they take action?
I'd hate to see regulation. I'd like to see education. If the government's going to get involved, they've got to cough up some coin and get education out there so people understand. And they have to look at it and go, think about just because I'm getting paid money or getting donations from such and such, let's look after the greater good and educate people about another way that is going to be more sustainable in the long run, and we can feed that 10 billion or 11.5 billion that they expect us to get to, because we can do that. No problems at all.
I love that. Just want to highlight to the soil lovers listening about, less regulation and more education. I think that's very, very powerful. Because I meet so many people who, say, I can't do this because, the council or this or that. And, they're always pointing a finger outwards. And it's like, I really believe it's an inside job. We need to point to ourselves and create the world we want to see. And, we only have to look about, all the research that happened with the willow trees and the removal of all the willows. And then all of a sudden now there's so much evidence about how they do slow the water. They do create sediment. They do clean and filter the water, but the catchments didn't want that. They wanted the water in the catchments as quickly as it possibly could get there, you know? And so who's, whose side of the story and what are they trying to achieve is the problem.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I love Peter Andrews saying that the Australian landscape, the water used to flow through it. Now it flows over it.
Yep. And
we need to get back to it flowing through the landscape and being held up in springs and being held up in these natural spaces that can go out through the landscape and help there. And I know we have to manipulate the land. We're farmers. We've got to be able to get our equipment around and all those sorts of things. But there are still so many things that we can do, and simple things, whether a plant extract or a little bit of worm juice or whatever it might be, planting 2 things in a paddock instead of just a monoculture. Like they're the places that we can start and really make a difference. And that's what we need to educate about.
Yeah, yeah. What is some of the low-hanging fruit that a farmer can do as like a bit of a, first step? What's something that someone could do like tomorrow to change the way that they think about their landscape?
Well, look, if you're a really conventional farmer and you love to go out and spread urea, just cut it back by 20%. It's not going to make much of a difference to your yield, and use a plant extract to start to stimulate your biology and get that biological system in your soil going. Use a liquid vermicast. It's not by using a little bit less urea, you can afford to put these other couple of products out, and that will slowly and if that's all you did for the rest of your farming life, your soil would slowly improve. It wouldn't improve as fast as I'd like to see it. I'm pretty impatient, but that just doing that one thing is something simple that any farmer can do.
Yep. And again, it's to that point where you don't have to go 100% all in, just go 20% in, do one part of your paddocks and not all the others, keep the urea on that one and have a test plot over there and track the difference. And it is a time thing. And you mentioned as well before that it can take a few years or, what from your experience, like how long is that window that it takes to, maybe the first year or the second year, some yields drop, but then when is that kind of magic line where the yields don't even matter because you're growing such high premium product that it's more about profit, not yields?
Yeah. Look, I don't think we should have a yield drop personally.
Okay.
I think, and we definitely shouldn't have a profit drop ever. I think by doing it smartly and people have proven this all over the world. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of people come before us, like the poor old Gay Browns and things like that, who went through some pretty hard times. But if we can learn from their knowledge, and we don't need to go through those hard times everywhere. But I'm a 3 to 5 years, that's when you really start to see the benefits. If you know what you're looking for, you'll see them in the first year. You'll see better water infiltration. Like, even though if you dig in the soil, you may not see better structure, but if you do an infiltration test, I'll guarantee you within 12 months of you starting to head down this path, you'll have better water infiltration. And in a country like Australia, that is just so important.
Yeah, agreed.
So,
I think the water cycles is one that we've kind of completely lost and missed. And if we focus on that more, you like what you said before, like local water cycles is really important. The humidity, the dew, that every farmer can have free water every morning, with morning capturing it on green leaves, not bare soil. So it's just crazy what your mind can see when you change the paradigm.
Yeah. Just imagine having an Olympic-sized swimming pool in every hectare of land extra to draw on over summer. Like, how good would that be? And that is just about improving soil structure and improving soil health. Yeah. So, anyway.
No, I love it. And it's refreshing, but it's frustrating sometimes too. And you think, how does not everyone see this? That's when I came into this business and watching some of the content from 10 years ago. And I'm like, and we still haven't done anything. Now is better than ever. And I'm very excited about the number of people and, even mainstream kind of subscriptions, Netflix and all that. There are documentaries about, Kiss the Ground and, fantastic fungi. And it's really waking people up to the power of nature. And there's podcast interviews now with big known celebrities. And, just recently there's a big regen farmer, I forget his name, and he was on the Joe Rogan show, and it's a massive amount of awareness to the regenerative movement and soil health. And, and it's just awesome to see this kind of being spoken about in so many different platforms and areas. Like, people can't really escape this world of soil. So, Luke, how can people get to hang out with you a little bit more? Like, what is the way that you do your services? Is it consulting? Is it like a training program? How do you operate your business and coaching and education?
It's mainly through consulting at the moment. I did have the opportunity earlier in the year. My wife fractured her spine, which wasn't so good, but it let me sit at home for 10 weeks, and I actually did a Korean natural farming course.
Oh, nice.
And that's all about building your soil health. And so we are looking at doing some education with that next year. So my thing over Christmas is to sit down and put that program together. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, mainly consulting, and I can be contacted through my Facebook page or web page or whatever is the easiest way to get hold of me, or just pick up the phone and ring. Phone calls are cheap. Always happy to have a chat with someone.
I know, probably the best way of communicating these days. And the links will always be around the video and the show notes and so forth. And you did mention Korean natural farming. And for those who don't know what that word is, can you just explain a little bit about what that is? And I think one of the things that they always focus on is what's known as IMOs. Is that something from that kind of school of thought? And unpack that for us for a little bit.
So Korean natural farming was put together by a gentleman they call him Master Cho. And he's gone out and gotten ancient wisdom, I suppose, and brought it all together. So it was from all over Asia. It's not necessarily Korean, but it's basically the simple part of it is there's 9 different solutions that you can make yourself. And some are plant extracts, and some of it is a calcium extract and a nitrogen thing. But the main thing is an IMO. So that's the indigenous microorganisms. And that is the thing that I'm probably most passionate about, is building your IMOs. Because we can go and buy a bug in a bottle out of a shop and come and put it in our soil, but it might have been made in India. And the soil over there is different to the soil here. The environment's different. The stuff that lives, indigenous microorganisms have lived here for thousands of years. Mm. They know how to live in our environment, and they will persist. So, and you just go out with a bit of rice, half-cooked rice, and you harvest it from the best part of your farm or a really good forested area, and the biology there will go in and try and get a cheap feed on the half-cooked rice, on the starch, and then you capture that. And then you go through a process of building on that over time and brewing it out. And then you put that trillions and trillions of indigenous microorganisms that know how to live in your environment, and you rebuild that population. And that's it in a nutshell.
It's amazing. It's so simple when you think about it. Like, just even explaining like that, it's like, it's those kind of like, I just feel like sometimes when we had less technology, we were smarter. Our great-great-grandparents just really understood how it all worked, and that there was always a natural solution. Even just that explanation of like the half-cooked rice. The organisms eat some, get stuck on the hard bit. You capture them. You're able to increase that colony and then spread it across the farm. Like, it just makes so much sense. And the whole fact of like keeping it local, using the local biome of the farm back into the system. That's why I love when farmers get excited about making their own compost or brewing their own compost teas and spreading it out to the farm, because I think there's nothing more magical than the compost being made by the local plant life and wildlife and then fed back into that, system and creating that circular economy.
Yeah, absolutely. And through doing this, you actually generally create a fungally dominant product to spray back out. So, and I think that is one of the big missing links, is our fungal life in our soil needs to be regenerated, because that's what creates structure. That's just so important. And it's really been a really interesting journey. And I've got a Facebook page called KNF Oz Style, and what I've been doing is making these products up and then sending them off to EAL and getting them tested. And I'm just putting all the test results up on that Facebook page for everybody to see. So that's been a really interesting journey, a little bit expensive, but it's been fun.
But it's cool, because people need to see it to believe it. And I'm glad that there's someone's out there doing that. And, it takes it away from that woo-woo hippie stuff and makes it, scientific to some degree, which some people need that validation. Not that it worked for centuries, without any, intensive machinery and genetic inputs. And so that's really awesome. And we'll share the links to that Facebook group around the show. But Luke, are you ready to become the voice of our soils?
Absolutely. Let's become the voice of our soils. But one thing I just want to touch on with what we've been talking about is, as I said, I've done a bit of natural horsemanship and done a lot of lessons. And one of the things that it always comes back to is the basics. And everybody's always looking for the next level lesson. So, and it was always said to me, to be a professional is you're just using better basics. Like at the end of the day, it's just doing the basics with excellence. So if you just stick to the simple things and not look for all these fandangled stuff, and you just stick to the basics and you do them with excellence, you'll be halfway home.
Yep, 100%. It's been our word of the last few years. It's always like back to basics, keep it simple. And, that whole KISS analogy, or an acronym, it's just like, if we just keep it simple and go back to basics, it's amazing what can unfold. In fact, the complex system flourishes when we keep it basic,
Absolutely.
Rather than controlling the complex, So I love that. Awesome. Well, let's become the voice of the soil. You have become the soil, you've embedded its energy, and you going to tell us, the people on the planet, what you would like us to hear from the soil.
As the soil, I would love for every farmer to improve their microbiome in their in the soil, because that is the key to driving a healthy planet. Simple as that.
Love that. Yep. It is simple. Again, there's that word, increase the biome and understand all those microorganisms. And the fact that then gets transferred into the plant, and then that gets transferred into the animal or to us, and then we eat the animal or the plant, and that gets into our gut biome, and all the studies around our biome and our mental health and our way that our body functions. It's just groundbreaking, unintended.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Luke, it's been an absolute blast hanging out with you today and being able to geek out about the regen. And, I love the fact that, the word regen wasn't around, because Helen and Hugo always say, it was never regen farming. It was always natural farming, biological farming, no input farming or, and all that. And our grandparents would probably say it's just farming. This is how we did it. There was no buzzword for it. Yeah. And as much as we think, going regenerative is this new way of farming, it's actually kind of bringing us back to our roots and the way that farming always was kind of done without the industrialization of it all. So it's, we've come far back at the beginning.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on, Ray, and thanks so much for what you do and getting these podcasts done and getting the message out there. It's just fantastic. I love listening to them and watching them. So thanks for what you do as well.
Awesome. It's very easy when it's from, passion, love, and it's just an absolute pleasure. And few life events have stopped me from doing them the last couple of months, and I really, really, really missed them. And so I'm so excited to get back on to the podcast wheel again and get in, because, I just love these conversations. They empower me more than anything. So.
Oh, fantastic.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Luke, for hanging out. And as I said, all the links to hanging out more with Luke. And I think, if you're in Australia or even around the world and you want to kind of pick someone's brain and have this ability to unpack your farm and create a bit of a, bespoke idea, then, there are more than enough people around these days that you can find the right person. And maybe the conversation you have with Luke is that penny drop moment that you need to get onto this journey.
Yeah, if you're looking for someone around, someone to come out and help you, just make sure they're as passionate about your farm as you are. And it's exciting times. Yep,
absolutely. Well, thanks so much. And until next time, soil lovers, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into our wonderful world of soils. I'm Regenerative, and I'll catch you on the next show. Wait, before you hit the skip button, if you're a soil lover and love listening to my podcast, then I want you to discover more by getting access to my Patreon, where I share behind the scenes and bonus content that doesn't always make the conversations on the podcast. So head over to secretsofthesoil.com/support, where for a very small fee, you get to hang out with me and other soil lovers, where we get to geek out about soil and get access to exclusive content. It's very exclusive. No, not really. It's just a lot of fun and a way that we get to support this podcast together in order so that we can have deeper conversations all about soil from mentors all around the world. So what are you waiting for? Go on, show your support and token appreciation for this podcast. Until next time. Well, soil lovers, that's enough secrets for one episode. I really hope that you enjoyed all the secrets shared during this conversation. But hey, let's not keep it a secret. Please share this podcast around and make sure that you like it and leave us a review, because that really helps spread the secrets of the soil. Until next time, remember, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into your soils.